I'm very pleased to welcome you for the launch of the first Partner4Biotech event by Genopole. This event is online, it's direct, and the objective of this event is to facilitate link between startups and corporations. For this event, we are very happy because we have 24 groups registered and nearly 40 startups or innovative biotech companies based at Genopole. Today, it's the opening of this event. This webinar will consist in two parts. First part, we will have a panel discussion with our speakers. We will speak about how to set up a successful partnership with startups and corporations. And after, second part, you can ask your question in live to our speaker. Don't hesitate, please. Feel free to ask questions on the chat. We are here with Olivier, and we can ask all your questions. We will try. Okay, so now I will let Olivier present you Genopole.
Yeah, very quickly. Hi everyone, I'm Olivier. I just want to thank all the participants to the seminar, and special mention to the teams at Genopole Communication and Genopole Entreprise, and especially Laurence, who has been working relentlessly for like 2 months to set up that conference. In a nutshell, what we do at Genopole, in essence, our job is to nurture the growth of startups and scale-ups in biotechnology and in the bioeconomy. How do we do that? We've got a number of programs at any stage of the development of the companies. So we've got an incubation program, which basically is us hunting future startups and future entrepreneurs in the labs, in the schools, and bringing them to entrepreneurship. So that's our Shaker program. We've got another program that is launched this month called Genio, which is basically an acceleration program. So we take a number of startups from the biotech side or from the bioeconomy side, and we bring them to, we support them coming to the market. And then we've got a couple of, I would say, more horizontal programs in particular spaces just to support them with investing. So we've got an investment program, we've got an internationalization program, we've got an infrastructure program, and a scale-up program, and which is what we are going to talk about today. We've got a program dedicated to the relationship, the sometimes difficult to apprehend relationship between startups and corporations, large groups. So that's what we're going to talk about today. 2 parts, like Laurence just mentioned. The first part will be dedicated to, well, to the beginning of that, to the beginning of the relations.
Yes, Olivier, but just before to launch the discussion, please. Yeah. No, just a few words.
I missed one, sorry.
Yes, no problem. Just a quick word about what is Partner4Biotech, but you speak about it. But for startup, it's very important because we open our network and we give the accurate connection inside corporation in order to accelerate your business. And for major group also, it's an opportunity to meet the best biotech startup and the startup that can fit with your needs. And also, I just would like to present you all the startups. Maybe you can see on your screen. I cannot present all the startups, but quickly, a few words to resume the domains. In the health tech, we have a new medical device for early detection of cancer. We have new vectors for gene therapies, new molecules for targeted therapies. Also, what else? In green tech, we have a lot of startups at Genopole. For example, new active principle produced by bioprocess. After, in food tech space, we have new proteins produced by fermentation or by new model of circular economy. And the last in the, what is it, food tech, health tech, Olivier, green tech, artificial intelligence, my favorite, you know. We have digital health tech solutions. We have also software for drug discovery, for example, or DNA therapy design. Just to say to you, it's not too late. You can book now a meeting with this startup. And now it's time, Olivier, to launch the panel discussion on how to set up a successful partnership. I am very happy to introduce our speakers. Thank you very much. And now we have Chloé Leprêtre, Research Transactor Director at Servier. Hello, Chloé. Sarah Thompson, Strategic Partnership in Research and Innovation at Danone. Hello.
Hello.
And we have Simon Trancard, CEO of Altar. Hello. And Marie Cambeau, CEO of Innovhem.
Hello.
Thank you again to be here. And now I give the floor to Olivier for the first part.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little carried away. Apologies for that. So the first part, like you said, the initial contact, the first meeting. It's not enough to just be able to set up a meeting. How do you approach that? What is the work to be done? I'm going to start to ask with you, Chloé, if you don't mind. If I'm a startup, basically, and I want to get in touch with Servier because I think that my technology and my company is kind of relevant to what you guys are doing. How do I do that? What's my initial approach? Whom do I contact? How do I kind of find a path through the organization?
There are multiple ways to get in touch with Servier, actually. Of course, the most natural, I would say the historical one, is to meet with a researcher in your field of interest when you're a startup. So this can be during a congress when you present a poster, whatever. But we also have established a number of other means. We have dedicated teams that are scouting teams at Servier. Who are really focused on what we need. They have a specific roadmap for each research area. And you can find their contact details actually on our website. It's the same for many large pharma groups where we detail our therapeutic areas of interest and our technological needs. And of course, you have also the org chart of the people you need to contact. And another way also to establish relationships with startups is for us to detect them through the links we have with different incubators around the world, around the globe. And we are also participating to the Golden Ticket, now called Spark Awards, which aims at, I would say, distinguished a startup which is really in our specific field of interest without establishing really a proper relationship, but really it's a way to distinguish them and say we are keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very helpful. I'm going to go to the other side, which coincidentally is also the other side of the room. Marie, you've got that first meeting. You've kind of identified, like we said, you've identified the person in any corporation that you want to be connected to. How do you do that? Do you kind of rely on your ability to present your startup and that's it? Are you going kind of more prepared to that? How do you prepare that first connection, that first meeting?
Well, thank you first for the invitation. I think it highly depends on the interlocutor you have. Obviously, if you are connected with a scientist, it's obvious you will present the technology. And it's really easy for me, for example, because I am a scientist, so it's not a big problem. But if you are connected with people like a business developer or a strategic alliance manager, it's very different, and you have to prepare really carefully the first meeting because you have to define the purpose of the meeting. You have to define what you want as a relationship with the corporate group. And it's really, really important. If I have some time, I can just tell you a little experience I had. I had the chance to connect with the strategic alliance manager of a big group, one of the top 5 pharma of the world. And it was very important for me, obviously. And finally, I was connected with her and a scientist. It was quite difficult to manage how to prepare. What is the main focus? Is it science or is it business? I don't know. And I didn't want to miss any opportunity. So finally, I was open to everything, and I wanted to show them that I was open to everything. And I think that I completely missed the point, because finally they didn't understand if I wanted to enter into a co-development, a service, a research service, or something else. And it was completely missed.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the great example. I mean, the difficulty you had is kind of exemplify kind of the need to work really specifically on your objectives. Sarah, all this is great. I mean, the corporation is perfectly clear. We can kind of find the right people. The startup has worked, has done its homework, and that's fine. Everything is great. In the real world, my question is, does it happen sometime, and why is that? That there can be some sort of a gap between the expectation of the startup and the actual reason why the corporation is around the table. Is there some sort of kind of discrepancy sometimes?
Yes, unfortunately that can happen. Not always, of course, luckily. But if I think particularly about the biotech area, that happens quite a lot to us in the agro world, because we would be very interested in looking at the uses of a new ingredient, for example, produced by bioprocesses or new proteins. However, we would not be the company who would actually do the production or the scale-up. And we often have this mismatch that the startup is hoping that we will do the scale-up, but our facilities are not able to do that. And they really ought to be talking to one of our major suppliers if that's what they're looking for. And so we often have this misunderstanding that they're hoping that we will be their scale-up partner, and we can't be. That's just not the way we're structured today. Yeah, that's very important. Thank you. Simon, let's raise a little bit the stakes. I mean, you're a man of multiple continents, right? So you're working with different corporations all around the world, South America, etc. Is there some sort of a multicultural dimension, in addition to everything that has been said here, a multicultural dimension to that? Is it, maybe not, by the way, but is it a bit more difficult, a bit different to kind of have that sort of preparation when you're meeting with a group from, I don't know, any other place in the world rather than Europe?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, for sure. If your objective is to understand what is the objective of the people you're talking to, and make sure that these people understand correctly what you're offering, it may be difficult depending on the cultural gap that you have. And I think it's more important that to be sure of an information rather than to try to get many information and not to have 100% confidence in that, in what you obtained or what you can provide to the other party. So I prefer to really take time. These first meetings are very short, but if you can just focus on the most important principles and rephrase what you're hearing and try to force the partner to also talk again about what he was just saying. I think it's very important to make sure that there is a true connection, which may be difficult if you talk to Japanese people, for instance, or yes, especially Asia. I don't have so much experience with this continent, and I think I'm not very experienced in talking to this guy. So I will focus much more on one very important point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's critical, and I mean that's the canonical example. The intercultural gap sometimes with Asian countries. Yeah, okay, I understand that. Thanks to the 4 of you for this first part. I just wanted to add that that's exactly the reason why we're setting up that kind of meeting today, that kind of conference. That's because we're kind of have a little bit of experience, and I'm not saying just the people working at Genopole, but the entrepreneurs and the corporations we're working with and the mentors. They can help you do that, because what I'm getting from the four questions we had was, there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, getting the first connection is great, that's fine, but a lot of work to be done. You've got to manage expectations, you've got to manage your expectations, you've got to manage the corporation, the partner, the hopefully partner to be expectations, and that's not a small thing to do. And that first meeting is very critical, like you mentioned. It's short, and that's the chance you've got. So. Yeah, I mean, the example from Mario was absolutely great in that regard. Thanks to the four of you. Now, if you okay with that, Laurence, I don't know the timing, but okay. That should be okay. Let's move to the second part, which is, okay, you had that first meeting, the relationship is ongoing, and then we're arriving to the critical step, which is more well acknowledged, the negotiation stage. Yeah, the negotiation part. Thank you, Olivier. We know that it's not easy. It can be difficult with a lot of dimensions. And for this, I would like to ask to Simon, as a startup, is it difficult to negotiate with a group? What advice can be given to startups that listen to us?
It's very easy. No, I'm
yes.
Joking. No, it's yeah. I think it's the good meeting. The first meeting can be actually with not the best people to talk with. It's an opportunity. It maybe comes through your network, or you proactively look for somebody on LinkedIn, or you meet somebody by accident in a congress. So I think that the first challenge is for you to identify who owns the decision. And this may be very tricky depending on the large corporation. So it's like a treasure hunt. You have to step by step understand. Yeah. So you may talk to tens of different people from the same organization before you can eventually understand who will decide and who is owning the budget and who owns the decision. I think it's something that I can help is to ask to all the different people the same question. Make sure that you have the right answer, and this will also help you maybe to understand the level of maturity that these corporations have in dealing with startups, because of course we are like very weird animals to them. So not all have the same level of maturity in order to address these opportunities. That helps also for a startup maybe to prioritize and focus on the large corporations which are more mature and more agile in making a deal with a startup. Okay, yes, very precise. Thank you, thank you. So you have to do your due deal on a large corporation. Yes, if you have an advice. A bit to investigate a bit. Investigate. Because you can. I used a lot of efforts without any benefit because I waste time in not prioritizing the right target. I think. So the due diligence is on both parts. Yes. Yeah. Not only in one way, but it's on both parts. And as a startup, you have limited resources, so you have to make the right decisions. Yeah. Okay, Simon, thank you. Now, Chloé, how does Servier facilitate links with startups? Are there any tools or programs to support them?
So at Servier, we have a knowledge that a lot of innovation around is actually nested in the startups. So we are trying to make the links easier. We have now set up kind of a startup at Servier program through which we are welcoming the startups at Servier. And when we establish a relationship, we try to, let's say, integrate the startup in our teams, because yes, the startups are strange animals for big companies, but it's actually sometimes the same for startups. They do not really understand how those big companies are working. And the big companies are all different in their processes. So we are trying to integrate them in our team to fluidify actually the exchanges between the two structures, and also we know that it's how we can foster innovation, how we can have it emerge, and the best ideas are actually in these mixed teams. Another way we can try to make the link with a startup is through the creation of an incubator. Saclay, I want to mention that. Servier is building a nice research center in Saclay, and we have dedicated a space where we will host the startups of the region, which is a very it's a region where there is a lot of innovation, a lot of inventors. So this is a way to also make connections, because those startups will have access to our platforms, technological platforms, expertise of different skills that they might not have recruited yet. And I would like also to mention today the tool that is now created by BPI France through Les Deep Tech, the website. We have made an effort with different companies and startups. I think someone from the Genopole was also in the work group to make a document that will be a checklist of the different items that you need to remember when you're negotiating a contract with a large company. So governance, IP, provision, how you would make the decision. So it's important to discuss that. So this tool, I really encourage you to go and see this document, because it's a very nice preparation when you're trying to negotiate a contract.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just interrupt one second?
Yes.
Just to mention the fact that in the chat box you've got on the conference, you can ask questions.
Yes.
And we'll try to, at the end of the round table, we'll try to bring them to our participants just to have answers. So if you can do that now on the chat box, right?
We are ready. Huh?
Yes,
we have all
ready.
here
we've
in
got
the tablet.
very nice little computer, so we can pick them and bring them to the audience, right? So sorry about that. But
thank you, Olivier. It's important. Now, Chloé, from your experience at Danone, how to facilitate the negotiation with a startup?
Well, I think the first part is that we've had a lot of fails in the past by wasting time, as was mentioned earlier on discussions. And one of the parts that really slows us down is around IP discussions.
Yeah.
So what we have done is we've realized that a lot of what we're looking for are new ingredients, new functional opportunities that we can add to our products. And many of these fail because of technological reasons. So we've decided to kind of inverse the situation. And we prefer now to do a simple material transfer agreement just to see if we can actually test the samples and if they're available, see if they would actually work in our use cases. And have that answer first before we spend time and waste everybody's time and energy working on various IP clauses, which may be difficult to work out. And to do that, we've worked a lot with our legal team to really try and simplify documents. Actually going back to really look at the wording and try and make it as easy to understand as possible for laymen, so that we hope that the CEO of the startup will be able to understand it themselves, that they won't necessarily have to get legal advice, to try and make it as simple as possible so that we can go much faster in this initial step. So we've developed two documents around that last year, one around material transfer agreement and one on a feasibility study, to really move forward without seeking any IP obligations at this stage, really just to understand if this new technology is of interest to us. If that is then successful, then we can engage in much deeper conversations. But it's really to try and accelerate our processes. We know they're slow, but we're trying to speed up and really integrate these new technologies as fast as we can.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And now I want to ask to Marie. Marie, should we be alone or come with an advisor?
Definitely not be alone.
Yes,
too risky.
Go alone.
From experience.
Really? No, never. I didn't make that mistake. As it was mentioned before, I was quite obsessed with IP.
Yes.
And because I start to work very early with legal advisors, I can I can see that there was not the only risk in the negotiation, and there is a lot of risk that we cannot imagine. And in particular, I could mention financial risk, a risk related to responsibilities, for example. So it's very important to be accompanied by a legal advisors, and I should say that you have to, again, choose with care which one you will be accompanied with, because it will highly depend on the field, the industry you want to be part in. I think that beyond the rules, beyond the laws, sorry, there is also the specific uses for each industry, and it's very important that your legal advisor knows all these aspects. And the second aspect is, again, speaking about globalization, if you want to address a global market, again, it will be very important to have a legal advisor that is that mastered every aspect. I mean, French or not French laws.
Okay, it's very, very clear. Thank you, Marie, and thank you, all of them. It's very interesting, very exciting, and we learn a lot now. We learn that negotiation can be complicated. Startup must understand the culture and the strategy of the group. It's not easy, as Simon, as you said. But we see that group implementing more and more tools and frame to help startup to negotiate. But we know that don't go alone, huh, Marie? Thank you for your advice. Just, I want to say here that Genopole also has a new organization, and now I am especially in charge to help startup to do link between startup and corporation. And next year, in 2022, we launch a new package, a new pack. You will have 3 or 4 months to coaching, global coaching and personalized coaching to help you to find the good contact into corporation. We will represent you into Congress. We will help a startup to do a good pitch. So it's a new program. If you have questions, feel free.
And just to add upon that, that kind of resonates with what Mary said. At some point, you need advisors around you. So it's not a one-on-one game, right? It's not the corporation on one side, the startup on the other side. Not because it doesn't match, just because there are a lot of dimensions. And you mentioned the fact that, of course, you need lawyers that can have a deep knowledge of what happens in France and at the same time what happens, let's say, in the US, for example. Okay. And so we're kind of taking your word on that and bringing to the pack and to Genopole actions at large what you just said. We need to kind of raise our game in supporting that connection, that deeper connection with the corporation. So links with the corporations and also kind of providing the expertise to the startups. To the startups. Sorry.
Perfect, exactly.
Because, that just resonates with what Mary and everybody was saying. Yeah. No, sorry.
It's perfect. Now we can take a question from the audience. You can...
I mean, there's a first question.
Yes, Olivier,
that's absolutely obvious, which is, does anybody around the table... I mean, I know it's sometimes kind of tricky to be able to talk about things that have been happening, but can some of you around the table sort of bring what I would call a successful example of a partnership between one of your corporation of one of your startups and a startup of a corporation? Sarah, I think you've got a pretty strong example, actually.
Well, I think, we may not be seen as a very a biotech company. Even though we've been doing fermentation for more than 100 years, our fermentation for dairy is pretty simple and is not what it's not a high-tech bioprocess. But a couple of years ago, we launched on the market a product which has biotech-produced ingredients, which are in our infant formula, which are very exciting ingredients called human milk oligosaccharides, which are naturally present, but very difficult to obtain, of course. And these are produced by bioprocess, so it's an exciting field for us to be able to our first products, which are launched with this kind of biotech-produced ingredients, and we hope there'll be many more, because we really believe that bioprocessing will enable us to reach and produce these functional molecules that may be found naturally in nature, but extremely difficult to actually cultivate or produce at a regular agricultural scale.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question. Oh, sorry.
Maybe Simon, also you have an example of partnership with a corporation to explain?
There may only one example I'm authorized to talk about, which is we have a collaboration for over 4 years with a Brazilian plastic maker, Braskem, which has turned into a partnership where we have extended the scope of projects in a renewed agreement, which has been disclosed, which is also very nice for startups to have also corporations accepting to publicly disclose that they work with you. And I think that there is mutual trust, and they count on us and we count on them for the next years, which is very nice, because as a startup you have not so much visibility on in the medium or long term, and having this large corporation support is, I think, is essential.
Can I just add on that and ask, how did you, without betraying any trade secret or anything, but how did you get to them? I mean, was that an obvious choice because of your technology and what they're doing? Was that just because?
I think that they were already very mature, or they were ready to listen at the story that we were telling them. So in terms of the technology that we offered, the approach, they were one of the players that were very excited about, I would say. And I think it was also a question of timing. There was a very important project for us that was at early stage, so that in the design of this project they could onboard our technology, which is so the window of opportunity was good. And so there was this first project, which has been very successful, delivered result over expectations, and which launched the partnership. But yes, we were lucky. You have to meet the right people at the right time, and
so it's not luck. That's my point. It's not luck, right?
You have to provoke that, but it's also so you have to generate multiple leads to make, and that comes to the former point. You must focus on these prospects because you have the best opportunity that it will deliver on the medium or long term, not just like waste your time in doing proof of concept that people just want to scout your technology, but they do not expect to use it. They have no identified needs further.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe another question. Is the confidentiality for groups or startups, but a lot of startups ask us, is the confidentiality guaranteed during discussion?
And how do you make sure of that? That's the question. How do you make sure that the confidentiality? I mean, that's an obsession for everyone, right? But we've had that discussion. Yeah, I mean, guys, if you want to answer that.
I think that from the startup point of view, it's really easy. That's what we were saying just before. We want to sign an NDA, and it's the first point. But it was not so simple, and I will let Sarah and Chloe speak about that. But the thing is that we cannot guarantee any non-disclosure. I mean, it's too difficult, basically. So you can sign any NDA you want. After that, you cannot see.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's a difficult topic indeed. When you sign an NDA, you commit not to use the information you are receiving for other purpose than the evaluation of the technology. The problem is in big companies, even if we are big, it's often the same people who are working and evaluating different technologies. And once you're committed to that, you have to put the Chinese wall into the brain of those people. So it's why sometimes the startup are complaining. Why does the big company not want to sign a CDA right from the start? It's because we really want to be sure that we are interested into the technology before committing to keeping everything secret, because it's something that is blocking us after that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that relates back also to Sarah's example, right?
Yeah. I always try to never sign an NDA at the first meeting, because if the meeting is effectively a disappointment, or it's a mismatch, or it's doesn't go the way we want, we've gone through all that process for nothing. So I think it's good to have first a series of meetings to understand, are we going in the same direction? Is there mutual interest? Is there a project that we can develop together? And then there can come, that would be the right time. And I think you can do it without revealing too much of the deep details. Yeah. And it's also very difficult in a big corporation to keep track and really be compliant to the NDA, because we're a global organization. Yeah. My colleague in North America could be speaking with somebody very similar or competitive, and it's extremely difficult to keep track of that. So we try to sign them when it's really needed, and not too early.
And I think, by the way, that's our job, right? I mean, we've got to bring that cultural shift along, because, like you mentioned, lots of startups that come to us at the beginning of the process, working with us, are really obsessed with that, really obsessed with, I don't want to talk to anybody if they have signed a ton of NDAs on every... And it doesn't work like that, for obvious reasons that we mentioned. So we've got to kind of reach a point where everything is kind of satisfied with what happens, and it's also trust. But we've got to educate them.
We have to do this. Maybe another question?
Yeah, sure.
How much time closing a deal take? Not easy, yeah? But interesting to know.
You mean in months, in years?
In days? No.
Oh, yeah, right.
No, impossible.
Between 3 and 60 months.
3 and 6... No.
60 months?
Can be. I think I was saying about the window of opportunity. Yeah. We have a technology which is nice, but that cannot address any challenge. So there may be a project you're arriving too late on, or there's no fit, so you have to wait for another large project to be launched. And so the technology scouting that large corporations do may be good for an opportunity that will arise in 3 or 4 years. So, but it doesn't mean that the negotiation is being interrupted. Meanwhile, because a startup changes its business model maybe every 1 or 2 years, right? So you have to update them on your status of development, etc. So you have to rebalance the principle.
And I think the implication here is that it's often more on the side of the corporation. So I have a question for you guys, which is, are there some sort of a set of drivers to that extension of to that broad framework that Simon drives? I mean, what do we control that can make the process a little less slow or a little bit faster? Is there something we can do? Well, I'm not, but if that's also something they can do as startups to kind of sort of keep that process ongoing. It's not interrupted, I got you, but 60 months can be a little slow, right? Especially in a precarious situation. Is there something they can do? Is there something, apart from the tools you mentioned, that you're working on? Is it a question of process, or is it on a case-by-case situation? Depends on the technology, depends on the willingness of the company at that specific time for that specific kind of technology. Is there anything we can do for that, to kind of make the process more, streamlining, or is it what it is?
I think there is a different reason why the process might be a little bit slow. If the project is not a priority for the company, then, and I guess that on that you might not have a lot of control as a startup, so that's a difficult one. It might also be that the project had not been framed properly at the initial stages, so hence the checklist, which is also very important to make sure that you have framed everything and that you agree at least on the science and on the budget also sometimes. So that's the second part, and you can so make sure as a startup that everything looks good, and you can go through a term sheet for that. It's often accelerate the discussion. I would say that the third thing would be to, well, make sure that you pay attention to the most strategic points and get really focused for the stake and not have positions of principles. I mean, sometimes we can see that in the negotiations, and that also relates to what you said, Marie. You need to really choose well your lawyer because sometimes it's not helpful. So I've seen that, so that's why I mentioned it.
Okay. If I could add maybe just a simple tip and trick, which I have had used on me, but to understand if your project is really a priority for the company. What happened to us was a startup came with numbers and said, this is the, I don't know how many meetings we've had together. I have met so many people from your company. I have already invested so much time. And they actually quantified and tracked everything.
Yes.
And that really pushed us to a decision, because that when you see those numbers, you say, well, are we just stringing them along, or we really should be honest and say, we should come to a decision, is this a project for us or not? So it's just a simple trick, but it works quite well.
I'm loving it. This is brilliant. Maybe the time for one last question, if you don't mind. Which is a great one, actually. Okay, the partnership is set up, and that's fine. And that's for the four of you. How do you keep interest for the corporation, for the startups, and likewise? I mean, how do you maintain that over time? You've been working with corporations, you've been working with startups for some time now, maybe for years for some of you. How do you keep how would you keep the relationship fruitful, really?
Who wants to answer? It's difficult and not easy.
It's a very difficult question, and perhaps you can precise depending on
Jean-Baptiste,
kind
please,
of
if you want to add something.
You mean in terms of it's a long-term study, or you want to have a lot of relationship and a lot of studies or co-development of projects together with the corporation?
I think probably the implication of the question is also, once you've set up something around a specific technology, ingredient, whatever, a principle, whatever you're working on, is it easier maybe to start working on a different program with them, or are kind of the game kind of reset to the very beginning, and that's the same, except you've got more experience and then maybe you know more the startups, but can you do that again? I think that's the question, more or less.
Yeah, I think.
Which doesn't
hopefully.
More answer?
Hopefully. But I think I think every case is specific, because I see, I mentioned 60 months before, because just something which is happening to us is that we probably will sign a small deal with a large corporation on the project we have started to discuss 5 years ago. And I think that the project has become a priority for them, so now it turns concrete. But hopefully the people have not changed too much, the scientific guys, but the open innovation has built, and so they have now a process to address this kind of opportunities, and the process was also very nice and smooth. But I think that in other way around, you may have very good relationships with decision makers in the large corporation, which are leaving to another company, and then you have to rebuild everything. Trust and confidence, and even though you have an agreement into force, you may have to start from scratch. So I think it's. I would not have a simple answer on that question.
There's no simple answer. I think you're right.
But I think what is important is to also in the agreement have like steering committees, or I don't know how do you name it, but to realign the objective of the collaboration. It's not very easy from the legal perspective always, but to maybe the objective of the corporation, but I think most probably from the startup, change over time. And to have the opportunity to sit around the table and to talk freely about this, I think is very helpful.
Yeah, and to talk alignment, constant alignment, and then that's the key.
I'm going to raise funds in 1 year. It will be nice if we could. We have opportunity to accelerate. Are you interested?
Yeah.
Or
no.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's these kind of things.
Thank you.
I think this is more or less it. Unfortunately,
yes,
I just really want to thank the four of you, really,
thank you again.
From the bottom of our hearts. Really, I especially want to thank everybody at Genopole who's been involved, and especially you. I have to say it again, especially you. And then, I was
all the team, our team, Olivier, and the department on communication of Genopole, they are very helpful.
Yeah.
Do you want maybe, Olivier, a short conclusion? Maybe it's...
No, I mean, I think that's okay. That's just the beginning of a series. That's just the beginning of an ongoing discussion. I mean, what I'm getting from that is it's not that easy, but if you follow a couple of drivers, a couple of rules, a couple of way of doing things, then that's something that's doable. I mean, we are living in a moment where startups have... I'm talking under your control, but startups are starting to, they're not starting, but they're getting more and more interest from the corporations.
Yes.
And I think we are living in a world now where it's kind of getting more and more accepted, whatever space we're talking about, that, corporations are key to the development of startups as well. So, I mean, it's a match made in heaven. If we do a proper work around that, then, I mean, hopefully it's going to bring some very, very great fruit on that. The only thing, it's a matter of time, right?
Yeah,
it takes time.
Sure.
Everything takes time, and you need to be working in the right direction. I'm not going to go further. Maybe you've got a couple of things to add when it comes to what's coming next.
Yes,
because
exactly.
That was just the beginning of something great. Well, thank you, and thanks again, you all.
Yes, thank you again. And just to close the webinar, just after this moment, we will send you and for the audience too, 2 booklets. One for startups with the list of all the group registered for the event, and also the presentation of the new package to help startup to maintain contact with group. And for groups, you will have also a booklet with all the list of startups based at Genopole. And also our objective is to do a follow-up with groups in order to build a lasting relationship with groups. What else? Very important, now the partnering is open. We have now 2 days of partnering, and you can book individual meeting with corporation and startup. Please don't forget to connect you to our platform. You have to review the list of participants. You have to finalize your meeting request, and also last point, but very important, you have to check all the tab. But answer the meeting request you may have received, please. It's very important to finalize well the partnering. So it was a pleasure for me to build this event. It's the first, Olivier. I hope we will do a lot.
I mean, I'm so proud of it. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you again to our speaker, to Genopole, to Captaprod. The team is very professional, very helpful. So thank you again. We hope that startup and corporation will have great meetings and with a lot of business and collaboration. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Bye, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.